see culture in my game is just a simple shooter, and I have to explain to all these guys that there is value anyway in a game. So this conference is supposed to be the level 2. You have cultural value in your game, but you have also politic value in your game. And I think it's important for the game designer, for the indie game designer to understand this and manipulate this. So let's start. I will just and ask my first question to William, because when we started to talk about this politic in games, he explained me that he made a mistake. He made a mistake releasing a game, and well, he don't. Well, you want to explain, or I explain what you say?
No, I will explain.
Okay.
So, I'm French, okay, it's obvious. We released a game called Blocks That Matter 2 years ago at Swing Summer. And we made the game, it was our first game. And I think that when we make games, we add some cultural things into it. And I have not seen this film coming, but when I played the game a few months after, I've seen that we have 2 characters that are men in the game. And we have female characters, but all the female characters are the enemies. And and it's not something I was aware of when we released the game. But then I think nobody has seen it because we don't have very good criticism in video games. So I don't think every people think about what they see and what is the message that they can see hidden inside the game. But yeah, I think we have made a game that is how to say that is
a mistake.
Yes, sexist, I think. Yes, and at the end
you're not, in fact, sexist.
No, I don't think so. Maybe I have some predisposition to be sexist, but I don't want to, but, because I'm a guy, so every guy are sexist. A little bit. Yes, at the end of the game, it's really naive a bit. The big twist is that the enemy is just a child and that it's a girl. That's a very. I think this is a bad twist because you're a girl. That's impossible. A girl in games. So yeah, I think we made a little mistake. It was really naive and it was not intended. But yeah, I think we made a little mistake.
Okay, let's have a question. Next question for Stéphane and Paolo, in fact. So the first one.
Wait, I have a real question. Like, why did you choose that? Like, what was was just like to create a surprise or something? Because it was just the most unexpected thing.
The story of the game, I had to tell that. The two developers are making a new project. And their names are Marcus and Alexei, and they are kidnapped by someone, we don't know who, and we discover at the end that it's just a little girl that wants to play their game before everyone else. So it's quite a lame story, but it was also when I write little things like that. I know that I put something inside. I don't like players that are really impatient, and I think it's obvious. If you see the game design of our games, because we make games that are quite slow and quite frustrating for players that really want to click everywhere. It doesn't work. It doesn't fit in our game. And yeah, at the end, I had forgotten. I forgot to play your question.
I was curious.
Well, if I understand, Dr. Kossi yesterday, we can define different levels. On the first level is just the immediate message. I mean, so some of your games are really spray immediate message. After we can have a message with the image, the music, maybe a more deep message like maybe a movie can have. And we have a third part, a third layer on a video game. It's gameplay. Yes or no?
Sure.
So my next question will be, in your opinion, what is the best way to deliver a message? Is it the first layer, very evident, or?
I was kind of like fiddling with my computer, hoping to put together a presentation in 5 seconds, but yeah, no, it didn't work. But yeah, I think there are not best ways, but there are different approaches you can sort of like convey or express through games. Ideally, you kind of want to have some kind of integration with the gameplay, so the gameplay should be informed and should be resonant with whatever you're trying to say or trying to express, and sometimes you're not. The designer doesn't even know what he or she is trying to express or say. But to me, there are different approaches. I was mentioning yesterday, an approach could be like more based on role-playing, so you're kind of like putting the player or the players into roles and kind of like force them in some kind of like a confined situation, not necessarily a disempowered situation, but you force them to work within a world, a fictional world that is not their own. Another approach is to kind of like present games as systems, so like kind of like encourage kind of like a system thinking and showing you. There is a pretty good serious game called the redistricting game made by some USC researchers and students that shows you a very specific aspect of the electoral process in the United States, how electoral districts are being changed and twisted according to sort of like political advantage. And that's another way. You're not really kind of like identifying with a character or anything, but you're just trying to understand how the system works and how to essentially exploit the system for your advantage. And that's kind of what politicians do all the time in the United States. So that's a more like a system thinking approach. Then there are other approaches that I also use that are not maybe like not that related to gameplay or role playing, and they're more like media intervention. And I made a couple of. I was talking about Phone Story. Phone Story is not. It's not too important. I mean, the message and the game itself is not that great. It was made very quickly. It was meant to be more like a gesture, and the idea was to have a game in that marketplace on that device as a kind of like was also a provocation to some extent. So there is a way to use games that is more like a media intervention. It is not just about what the game is, but also how the game interacts with the ecosystem around it. So in that case, it would not have been an interesting project if it was just an online game, but the fact that it was in the marketplace and eventually got banned from the Apple Store marketplace is what produced the meaning to me. So those are different approaches that you can use.
And yes, yesterday you talked about simulation also. Of course, if we think about civilization or SimCity or The Sims or even Age of Empires, I think we have definitively big social or political message in all these games. But in my opinion, Tetris have something, can vehicle a thing like Russian constructivism, if you see what I mean. So basic gameplay can also vehicle some meanings and some. Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
No, in fact, I wanted to get some other example, more basic, of action games or puzzle who can maybe give some meaning.
I'm the boss. You see. No, I don't know the boss of what, but I am the boss. But I am a baby boomer, and when I was a teenager, all my culture is based on Jean-Paul Sartre, from a writing point of view, Jean-Luc Godard for the cinema, and Bob Dylan for the music. So, as a director of the school, I am really aware to make more, ask to my students to make more political games. But, as you said, you have two problems. The first, that you have politics everywhere. All games, even Tetris, has something which is political behind. And some are really, you give the example of simulator, I will show you some work we are trying. Simulator have a mathematical model. This mathematical model is clearly has a political point of view. You cannot play SimCity like an increasing, without increasing the size of the population, the size of the city. You cannot make a green thing in a city. Maybe with the last one, because politics, but I didn't play I didn't play the last one. But that's one point. It's clear that all games have somebody a point of view on the world, on the story. But this is one thing. The other thing is you have very few political games. Games where you clearly vehicle a message, a point of view, engage, provocative. I don't know why the world of game is so conservative, is so afraid to show, to take point of view, to... if you look to even US blockbuster, vehicle clearly, some of them, some political message. And they are able, it depends of course on the political message, they are able to show it to millions of people. Why don't you have games which are clearly engaged in something and which are sold? It's probably a lack in the cultural aspect of games.
I have the beginning of answer, maybe we'll talk about that with Paolo just before the panel. In fact, my first game at Ubisoft, believe it, talk about drugs, prostitution and racism. And it was in 90, I think 90. And well, of course, this thing was a complete fail, distributed by Ubisoft, as you can imagine. And that's after all these old guys that you saw on different panels, like Frédéric or Eric. We change. We get the publisher with us, and the industry just grow. And we auto-censorship ourselves deeply. And the demand was to have entertainment and simple entertainment, not, and the demand came from the publishers who help us with money to make our games. And for 10 years, I think the video game industry was completely in an auto-censorship mood, completely. And now with indie games, clearly, Paolo and its work, or all this new energy coming from the new game designer, we go to new games and new political message in games, but
it's really a naive point of view. If you take some very well-known soap like Plus Belle la Vie, which is the main soap in France with millions of people, Plus Belle la Vie, in each episode has something which is political and clearly political. You had a whole story about the mariage pour tous, homosexual wedding, which was clearly engaged for the homosexual wedding in Plus Belle la Vie, and you have millions of people looking to Plus Belle la Vie every day. So the fact that it's political, the fact it's political is not, maybe sometimes, of course, if you're talking about the movie of Jean-Luc Godard, La Chinoise is not so popular than Matrix. I agree with that.
Matrix also has
and Matrix has also
yeah. Yeah, I was discussing yesterday with some friends that there is also a trend in Hollywood to kind of like introduce some kind of content for the people who are looking for content. Not everybody cares about when you're watching a mainstream movie, like we were talking about Batman. The most recent Batman movie was shot in part in my city, Pittsburgh. There is some content, seems to be some political commentary in Batman, but it's not really clear what it is, right? Kind of like you can think a lot about it, but it's not definitely coming out very, very clearly or neatly. And that's sort of similar to, I haven't played yet, but I've seen like reviews and several like videos, but the latest BioShock movie also has kind of like an impression of content of like you're dealing not just with shooting people, but there is American history wrapped into it, and there are those factions that are sort of in conflict, and so there seems to be something, and it's more than like politics or commentary. Is more like the designer, what's his name, Kelley, maybe. BioShock designer was saying this is not this is more like a Rorschach test. Is the test with the stains, with sort of like the psychological test in which you're looking at those blobs and you're supposed to see, like, to make free association. But what he was saying, that his goal was not to make a statement or anything or a commentary, but to give sort of like to give something that then you can complete with your own beliefs, essentially. So kind of like the opposite of saying something. Can give you a chance to see whatever you want to see in this game. So if you are a left wing, you will see it as a left wing game. If you're a right wing person, you will see it as a right wing game. So which is weird to me.
And well, Stéphane and Paolo also, how do you teach that to your students? I mean, of course you teach that. So how do you sensibilize your students?
I don't teach how to be provocative. Become provocative, making things, it has to come from the only thing I say is, you make the kind of game you want, and if you make something which is provocative, I will in certain sense encourage you. But I cannot.
No, for sure, I understand. It wasn't really my question. It was regarding William experience, maybe more. I mean, how do you teach the value in video games? And you know, it's not games provocative with this first level, but just to take care to the other level, to don't make mistake about the message.
I don't teach that. This is a present point of view. Don't choose something which may offend other people. You cannot make something which is really an avant-garde game if you take care not to of everything. I would in another way, I would like to teach, look to a lot of writings or movies which are by themselves, in a certain sense, provocative, which hurt some people. You cannot make a political game without hurting the people who do not agree with your political point of view.
Yeah, my students are already art students, so they usually are not too obsessed with video games themselves. They are already sort of trained to make works that is somewhat situated in the world or in conversation with other works and so on. So I usually don't have to tell them, like, oh, make a political game, and I definitely don't do that, because otherwise it will not just feel right. I mean, it has to come from themselves, but I do continuously kind of like question their choices, like why, if all the enemies in a game are women, I would be like, okay, let's talk about this. Why are you taking this choice? Why you're making this choice, and what does it mean? And what does it mean in the within the history of games, in which you have certain tropes, you have certain roles that are always attributed to women or minorities and so on. So I guess that's teaching is not. It's not the right way to put it. But encouraging.
Sure. One, you talk about plus belle la vie, and I work a little bit with this guy from Tele France, and this guy from television and movies, when they start to write a scenario, they just, even if it's artistic thing, I think they all ask themselves first, before the first line, what value they will vehicle in their movie. And for Tele France, there is a complete board who decide, okay, we will talk about homosexuality, or we will talk about drugs, and it's real decision just before the scenarist writes the first word. And my idea is, did you teach similar things with reflection before quitting everything of what I want to say? And
Well, sometimes I give them themes, and some very general themes, and some of those themes have a kind of, can have some social commentary. I still have not taught a class that is all about that specific genre of games or culture that is social commentary. But I've been doing workshops and workshopping more like activist environments, and a good way, usually a good way is to give people a constraint that is mechanical, so like a mechanics of some kind, and a constraint that is thematic. And so one workshop I did was to make, to imagine a game that was maybe a modification of a well-known game, like Space Invaders, and make it relate with a general issue or set of issues or values. So for example, like war and peace, militarism. So how do you transform this classic game that is Space Invaders into a pacifist game, or a game in which war has kind of like some kind of effects, and so on. So I had a bunch of a list of games and a list of values and issues, and then we crossed them together, and that's also useful, not just to make a different kind of game, but also to make people realize, oh, well, there are some, Space Invader is in fact a militaristic game in which you have those enemies, and the only way to get the only way to solve that game, to beat that game, is by destroying them.
Stéphane, you want to show
I want to
something?
show some two students' games and experience for showing. This one, we have Olivier in the room, I think so. He's here. It was the first year project. It's a simulation game and called Avenue de l'École de Joinville. Avenue de l'École de Joinville is a place where you have a centre de rétention administrative, an administrative retention center, which means the place you place people which doesn't have papers and which are not allowed to be kept in France. So you are in charge to manage this center. I don't know why I don't have the sound. And you have the people which were really in the center. You have the story taken from a database. And I go at the end of the... So this game win a prize because 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that's right, the Ministry asked the de la Culture asked to create a prize for the more original game. And of course the people gave the prize to this game, and the Ministry never gave the prize because probably he was afraid to be in trouble with his colleague of Ministry de l'Intérieur. I didn't have another kind of game which is well known in the school is called Fear Window. Fear Window is a game where you start the game and somebody says it's all in black and white. Somebody will discover a secret and you have to shoot anybody who can conceal this secret. And you start, you have a name, and you hear something in a small apartment, and you discover a small family, and a young girl discussion with her mother, and during 10 minutes, if you go to the end, you look to the family, and of course, all the game is made that you get empathy with the family. But as a gamer, you have to shoot. You have a lot of points where you should shoot the little girl, shoot the mother, or shoot the father when he came back, because maybe he can conceal the secret. And the whole game is made on the idea that, in the contrary of all game, shooting is a very difficult thing to do. So it's also a political game. Just to finish, I want to show you an experiment we have tried. I have discussed some time ago with somebody who is a professor in management, and we discussed about SimCity, and we said that all these kind of games do not give you any freedom, and more generally when you teach in classical school like HEC, management is on some rails. So we should make a game which is called Alter Management. We are in the process of making the game. The student made a trailer for this project. I want just to show you the trailer.
This is more than another management textbook with a funny title. Let's take a look. You are so used to rule number book. This is more than another management textbook with a funny title. Let's take a look. You are so used to rule number 3, keep growing. Well, doesn't work. Rule number 2. Make sure you grasp the big picture. Doesn't work either. Alter management is about rule number 1. You are free. Define the rules, the priorities, share or not, trade or not, and be prepared to defend your model. You are going to meet other players, interact, confront, influence, and see where it gets you. Don't let models decide. Decide them.
This is the way I try to improve the idea to make political games.
Okay. Thank you, Stéphane. A question for William. Do you feel games? No?
No, I prefer to make games with messages that are more subtle than real political games. I think that, for example, what you have made with the McDonald's game, I don't remember the name, but McDonald's, okay. It is a little bit more subtle because you don't really know if it is an ad game, an advert game, or just a parody. And yeah, my little story about Black Lives Matter at the beginning, it was not just a silly story. I really think that sometimes we can see things in films because we have some critics that can see the things in the films and analyze the editing and not only the scenario. And I think that in games we don't have that point of view. We don't try to see behind the funny picture. Yeah, that was my point. And
Do you think that before educating the game designer, we have to educating the players?
And game designers, maybe, because the mistakes, it's not a mistake, but the little sexist things we have made, if I were more aware about what I was doing, maybe I hadn't done that. And yes, I think that not only the players, but also the critics. Because when I see a game like Cookie Clicker, have you played Cookie Clicker? Yeah? No, some of you? Can you please bring a break? Okay, thank you. Cookie Clicker is a really addictive game where you click to win cookies and you spend the cookies you have earned to earn more cookies during time. It's and I think it's not just a silly addictive game that is in browser with nice visuals about cookie and jokes about grandmother, but it's really a game that explains that it's just useless to earn things just to spend those things to earn more things. I think there is a message here, and I think the game is interesting with this point of view, but I have not read it a lot of time. And also the game is addictive, and it has a problem because it teaches you sorry. It teaches that it's not really interesting to earn more things, to earn more things, but you want to, you really want to, and you can be trapped for only a few minutes or a few hours if you are really addicted gamer, and yeah, it tells something, but in another point of view, it also used these things to be successful.
Yeah,
I don't know if I see silly things here, but
I think that's a very good point. Definitely, I see things are moving. I don't know if French people do pay attention to Anglo-Saxon, American, and English criticism, but I think things are starting to move. And if people are making games like complex games, like I don't know, like Card Life, with that sort of like demands that kind of like a critical approach, I'm definitely starting to see journalists that are not just oh, this is a game you should buy or not, but let me explain this to you. And but the other thing is also we mentioned Godard and that group of people, Nouvelle Vague, sort of directors. The interesting things is historically they started as critics, as film critics, and they were not happy about the state of the cinema at that point, and they decided, okay, we have to do make cinema by herself. And that to me is also like the parallel will be maybe we also need people that are not necessarily from like they don't have a strong background in gaming to make games that are obviously different, that will be different. So.
I have a question for Paolo, just a quick one. Don't you have problem with McDonald's and church and all with all your provocation? Never?
No. Good question I get every time. I was like looking at I wonder if somebody was going to ask me this question.
Good.
Maybe we should open to the public.
For sure, we're late, so...
I just want to, I forgot to mention, I read a book, I was when you submit a book at MIT Press, they send to people to read it and give a recommendation. And I think the book will be published. I'm not sure it has been yet, but if you find this book, buy it. I have read it. It's called Avant-Garde Video Games, Playing with Technoculture, and it's by Brian Schramm. And it's really an interesting book. I don't know when it will be published, but it will be published at MIT Press, maybe at the end of this year or beginning. It's very, very interesting from the point of view of what is avant-garde in general and how it applies or could be applied to video games.
Thank you. Some question about politics in games and about everything there.
Just a comment. You haven't spoke of market, because there is market for political games. Just a hint, like Paper Please, which have taken a long route, but is doing well on Steam and other thing like that. But have you experimented about marketplace and political games?
Well, my take so far, like in the last 10 years I've been making games, was that I kind of want to connect with audiences that might not, already agree with me. A problem with a lot of socially engaged art and culture, like if you think about like documentaries, there are amazing documentaries that nobody watches, or only the people who are really kind of like into that sort of topic are going to see those documentaries. Or same thing for like a lot of investigative journalism and books and essays. So one of the reasons I was interested in games was because it's a good way to get in touch with people that are not necessarily already, have already a social consciousness or something. So yeah, at that point, the best way to connect with this, I guess, casual games, that's how, casual gamers, that's how we used to call them at some point in the mid-2000s. The best way was by free online games. So I didn't want people to pay for my games in order to get indoctrinated by me. Yeah, I think things are changing now in the sense that it's more common to purchase a little game that are downloadable online, and I think people start to think in terms of if a game is free and online, probably it's not a really good game, while if it's on Steam, it means that it's being validated and sort of curated. And so I'm considering to eventually put something on Steam just to see if it works, or other marketplaces, not necessarily that one, and see how it works. Because in fact, I would assume that if Paper Please has been released, I guess normally, like as a free game, like the previous one by Lucas Hope, probably it would not have been so successful. The fact that it was presented as, okay, this is a full game, it's commercial, it sort of like helped to reach an audience. The first version was free, right? And yeah, I don't think people were like that excited, mostly because it was a beta.
Maybe you have a market which is indirect market. For example, maybe you have read the book about news game, and you can make games for a newspaper. In France, there was an experiment which was in Le Monde.fr about La Première Socialiste, which didn't put it too much in front for a reason which has nothing to do with games, that the change of the leader for the election in France in a certain week. But the game was funded by the newspaper with some help from call from the government but maybe this is one way to fund political games. If you in United States the different party has paid people to make political games. Of course, you have to make the game for the party that you like, or if you want with money, you can make games for any party. But it's probably another way to fund this kind of games.
Yeah, we don't talk about that. I think in France, but in America and many countries now, the candidate in election use games. I saw a game in India about elections in India, and what do you feel about that? I mean, you have a feeling of manipulation or whatever?
Well, in the States, that happened not in the most recent elections, but in the election before. So it's something that is somewhat has been tried, and I think it didn't work out well. Honestly, like both parties in I don't know when was it? It was like probably like 2006 or something. Both parties have had video games made by young bogas, for example, like by actual company who were kind of like at the avant-garde of the serious games or news games sort of genre. And I don't think they were that into it. I don't think they were that successful as opposed to other like online media strategy of using social networks and maybe Twitter or viral videos. So there is definitely a market. It's definitely a niche market, but it has its challenges. And I think the news game book is also talking about those challenges that come with, how do you make a game for an event that is actuality, so it's going to be relevant now, but in a month it's going to be just forgotten essentially, or it's not going to be relevant anymore. So how do you develop games quickly that are also a very short sort of shelf or very short investment? So I think we're still a market. It could be a market, but we're still trying to figure it out. And so far, the experiments have not been very successful. So.
I would say that you have two things. The first, I think that some of political has financed and raised game unique to show that they are in the mood. They are thinking about what young people like, and in particular in Europe, you have a lot of people who are political and are interested in gaming, not because they are big gamers, but they want that big gamers vote for them. So the quality of the game is not, and young people want to vote for them. I have felt directly that in my activity as a director of a school. Another thing is probably the more effective game in terms of political impact is more related to transmedia events. Something from alternate reality games, where you mix some political activity in the street, political activity through social network, with some gaming interactivity. And this is related to a time, it starts at a given time, it finishes at a given time, and this can be correlated to the political campaign. Yeah.
Another question on the room? That's clear for you? Message. Okay. Okay. Something to add? Okay. So thank you.
Let's make the revolution.